Hello everybody, welcome along to our first ever Data Science Festival Movie Night. It's one I circled in my diary actually when we were putting the festival together. Obviously in normal live events, we all love to go and be educated and learn, but it's really nice to interact with people, and we definitely racked our brains in how we could try and do that in a different way, obviously in an online format. So we've already had a quiz night during the month of November, which I'm pleased to say was great fun. And I'm hoping tonight's the same actually. You know, the aim of tonight is, you know, really nice, relaxed evening, community coming together. We've got some fantastic panelists, which I'm about to introduce. And we can all, you know, enjoy what is a very enjoyable documentary, and hopefully have a good chat afterwards as well. Just before I get to the panelists, as with every event, if you've joined more than one, you've probably heard me say this before. The reason we're able to keep the Data Science Festival free is because of the forward-thinking support of our sponsors. This year we are sponsored by Facebook, Depop, ASOS, Dataiku, Royal Mail, Gusto, Deliveroo, and of course Data Idol. So thanks to all of those guys for making this happen. The chat is open. Let us know you're there. Come say hi to each other. We have the Slack channel as well. Jump in there. If you have specific questions about anything, please use the Q&A feature, and we'll share that. We'll save those for the chat at the end. In terms of this evening, the plan is I'll introduce you to each of the panelists before we start the screening, so you know who's going to be there at the end. We're going to watch the movie, and then we're going to come back for a chat at the end. So first and foremost, I'm going to introduce my good friend, Ian Ashmore. Ian, if I could invite you to turn on your camera and microphone. Ian has been a really good supporter of the Data Science Festival. He's based up in Leeds. He has hosted some of our events up there. He's a previous speaker. He's always really engaging and good fun in our panels and chats and stuff like that. So Ian, if I could ask you just to give a brief introduction to the audience, a bit about you.
Hey everyone, yeah, Ian Ashmore, like Dave said, data scientist up in Leeds. Most of my work's with deep learning, convolution and recurrent neural nets. Enjoy data science as a subject, so love being involved with this stuff. Saw this movie just once before and really enjoyed it. So yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, Ian. Our next panelist, we're very pleased to have him with us. It's Toby Manning. Toby Manning actually featured in the documentary. He is the president of the British Go Association. So if I could ask you, Toby, to turn on your camera and your microphone. And if you wouldn't mind, just give a brief introduction to everyone about your backgrounds and what you're all about.
So yes, I'm Toby Manning. I'm president of the British Go Association, the governing body for Go in the UK. And as was mentioned, I was referee for the first match that's going to be shown in the film when AlphaGo took on the European champion. When I say referee, I didn't have to do much. The main thing I did was invite all the participants to silence all mobile phones. But I was there to see fair play, and fair play was seen.
Fantastic. It's great to have you here, actually, someone that was there in real life. So I'm sure there'll be a few questions about that at the end, Toby, which is good. So thanks for being with us. Our next panelist is Natasha Regan. Natasha is a women's international master chess player. She is the co-author of Game Changers, which focused on AlphaZero. And the approach it took to chess. The book Game Changers, which I highly recommend, was actually rated the 2019 Chess Book of the Year. So check that one out. Natasha, if you don't mind, if you could give a brief introduction, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm Natasha Regan. My day job is that I'm an actuary. I also like to play a lot of games, and this film I really like because it's about Go. I've seen it several times before actually, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again. I play chess, Go and shogi, which are the games that AlphaZero plays and has become superhuman strength at. And the book I wrote, co-authored with Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, is about AlphaZero and how it plays chess, and also how human players can learn from the kind of self-taught ideas that AlphaZero worked out for itself at chess.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Natasha. And finally, last but not least, we're going to invite again another previous speaker, Ben Hammersley. He's joining us all the way from New York. So myself and Ian may or may not be having a glass of beer as we're watching the movie. I suspect Ben may not be, because it's perhaps a little bit earlier in the day. So Ben is a internationally recognised futurist, previously works in the world of journalism, editor at Wired magazine. So welcome along, Ben. Again, if I could ask you to give a brief intro, that would be great.
Oh, I think you did a very good job yourself. But yeah, my name is Ben Hammersley. I do two things really at the moment. I work as a futurist, so I help big companies and governments especially try to understand the implications of these technologies. And over the past few years, many senior executives and politicians have watched this documentary or certainly read about it, and have been then peppering people like me with questions about when the robots are going to take over. So it's very good to be able to talk to people who talk with people who understand it from a more sane level. And also, I'm a practitioner myself in terms of code. I have a small startup where we're doing a lot of natural language processing and other forms of machine learning. So it's really nice to sort of sit here and geek out as well. So it's going to be good.
Perfect. Super briefly, I'm David Lachlan. I'm the founder at Data Idols. I'm going to try and keep this show on the road a little bit. I think we may go off in several different directions. I'm also a really bad chess player. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting involved from that side of things. So as I say, the plan now is to start the movie. The movie lasts for around about 90 minutes. So if you have questions as it's going, please do use the Q&A. Equally, there's the chat function open there as well. So if I could ask the panelists just to turn off their cameras and microphones, please. We will see you on the other side. Well, how good was that, eh? I think that was the second time I'd watched that one, and it felt just as good as the first time, to be perfectly honest. It's a hell of a documentary. Definitely goosebumps in places, makes you think a hell of a lot as well. So the idea now, where I'm going to invite all the panelists back. There's been a lot of chat, obviously, in the webinar software as we've been going. It'd be good to keep that going now with the panelists back. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature, and we'll do our best to get to as many of them as possible now, which will be great. So let me just organise my screens, and we'll go from there. Toby, come and join us, man. You're my first question, Toby. You can't leave me hanging like this. So good fun, eh, guys? And it was good to see such chat going back and forward as well. I think the people at home enjoyed it. So it's been very pleasurable from that perspective. The first question I had was actually for you, Toby. Obviously, you were a referee in the match with Van Hooy at the start there, where he'd come to London, and they were doing that initial, testing against the European champion. What was that like? And what was the feeling ahead of that? Was it kind of feeling like Fan would, stand up, or, how did it change as the games went on there?
Well, it was very clear that the AlphaGo team were very confident that this was something that they seriously felt they had a good chance. I mean, you don't know until you've tried it in reality, but they were, reasonably happy it was going to be a fair fight. Mm-hmm. I think everybody I spoke to thought it would probably end up as Van Hooy winning 4-1, and when the actual results came in, it was really quite phenomenal. And
has it been a big change in terms of the uptake of Go following this? Have you noticed more people playing in the UK?
Well, the day after the publicity, I mean, the match was actually played in October, but it was all kept under wraps until February, when the paper in Nature describing what had happened and so on came out. And the day after that came out, the British Go Association website crashed. So That's
You put your membership fee up, didn't you? That's what you did, Toby. It's what I'd have done. I'm a mercenary like that. So just again, while I'm talking to you there, Toby, you know, obviously you've been playing Go for what, 40 years, more than 40
more
years?
like 50, now? I think.
50 years.
Like 50.
How does this, you know, how does this achievement, you know, stand, you know, in your mind?
I think in a sense it's sad, and as was suggested, the Go was one of the last great unsolved game problems, and now it seems to have been solved. And in a sense, that's a bit sad, but it's spun off a lot of things. We've now got open source software that you can use to analyze your games and see where your mistakes were, see during the whole process of the game whether you were winning, whether you were losing, because Go's one of these games that's very difficult in the middle of the game for certainly us amateurs to actually know whether you're ahead or not. And you can easily find that 3/4 of the game you're ahead and then you just lose in the last quarter, or possibly vice versa. And we now have software that will analyze your game and will tell you how well you're doing, or how well you've done, perhaps I should say, which didn't exist in the past. It's also hit some shibboleths. There were positions where everybody knew that in this position you played X, and then suddenly AlphaGo plays Y, and people say, no, you don't play Y, it's not good. And then after a bit of analysis, you realize that the conventional thinking was all wrong, and actually now what used to be considered perhaps an even result is now considered to be bad for one side.
So I feel like, you know, overall what you're talking about there is potentially, you know, improved the game for human players in terms of their approach to it, and that they're using it as an asset rather than the game's been solved, I give up. It's not stopped people from playing the game as humans, eh?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think any more than when Deep Blue beat Kasparov, people stopped playing chess. I mean, if I play AlphaGo, if I played Lisa Doll, I wish. If I played Fan Hui, I couldn't tell the difference. I'd just get creamed up in whichever one I played. Indeed, if I played Aja Huang, who was the guy, AlphaGo's robot, if you like, putting the stones on the board, if I played Aja, I would again get smashed up. And I couldn't tell the difference. All I know is I would be a wreck at the end of it.
Yeah, okay. I'll come to the other panelists just in one second, but again, talking about Go, for me personally, Go was a very new phenomena. They did a great job actually in the documentary and getting everything across with no knowledge of Go in advance. If people have watched that and they'd like to start studying Go or start to play Go, have you got any recommendations on how people can get started?
Well, the British Go website, britgo.org, that's BRITGO.org, is a good place to start. There's references there to software that free software you can play against the computer and learn that way. There's other resources there, and that's probably the best thing. I think the one thing I would recommend is, as you saw, the standard board is 19 by 19. That's actually quite complicated, and when you start, much better to learn on a small board, 13 by 13, or better even 9 by 9, because you learn all the tactics, you learn, if you like, the simple things and all the tools without being swamped by the complexities of the big board.
Perfect. Good advice. I'm sure I'm definitely going to check it out, because I like to play games badly, so I'm sure I can do that as well with Go. Just in terms of the timeline, we've had a question come in from Matthew Webber. I'll maybe flick across to you, Natasha, for this one. And Matthew is essentially getting his head around the timeline. So this match that we were looking at there was back in 2017 with AlphaGo. Since then, I believe that there's been an iteration to Alpha Zero. and there were some changes there. And I did see you answer one of the questions in advance from Nick there. What were the timelines between AlphaGo and AlphaZero, and what were the differences in approach?
Okay, so the differences in approach. So AlphaGo, as we saw in the film, used some human games, particularly where it was coming up with what the likely moves were in certain positions. AlphaZero, so the zero within AlphaZero is kind of zero human knowledge. And so the idea was that it would completely teach itself. And so it basically did that by playing lots of games against itself. So certainly for the chess version, it played 44 million games against itself at lightning fast speed. And then how it would learn would then, it'd be if it would win a game. So for the side that wins, it would try and play a little bit more like those moves and a little bit less like the moves from the losing side. So first it was just playing completely at random, and then it got kind of stronger and stronger over a course of hours. The AlphaZero was a little while, end of 2017, then the paper was published that had in it the AlphaZero games for chess, Go and shogi. And then there were further matches played at the start of 2018. And so it was quite quick, actually. I think they was the match played 2016 and then the end of 2017. So not long at all between AlphaGo and AlphaZero. I think that was the kind of DeepMind wanted. So AlphaZero was stronger than AlphaGo, but actually they wanted it philosophically to be able to be completely self-taught as well. And actually AlphaZero beat AlphaGo, I think 100-0. So it's substantially stronger than the AlphaGo that played against Lee Sedol.
And their aim overall, I guess, is this more sort of general intelligence approach rather than training, a model to play chess.
Yeah, their aim isn't to get strong at games, although I would say, as you could see in the film, that Demis Hassabis, he's an absolutely brilliant games player, and he plays a whole load of games, and he each year plays in the Mind Sports Olympiad, and he's been the Pentamind champion at that. So he's really fantastic. I mean, absolutely world-class games player himself. So I think, although he wanted to research AI, he was very, very pleased that the way he did it was through playing games. And games are actually a really good way of researching AI, or to know you're doing well and improving your AI. Because the great thing about games is you can kind of generate as much data as you want yourself, because you basically just keep playing and playing against yourself. And the other great thing is you get a result very quickly. So you can see if you're winning or losing, and then you get that feedback loop. So you can then improve your methods and then see how you're progressing against the scale. And with games, you've also got a sort of rating that you can get against people or against other machines. And so you can see just how good you're getting very quickly. So that's why games were kind of used in that research
approach. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think what I'll keep doing, guys, there's a few questions coming in. I imagine quite a lot of them probably will focus on Natasha and Toby, but then I'm going to aim to loop Ben and Ian in with some of the wider data science implications and perhaps where this could impact other parts of society and stuff like that beyond chess and Go. But in terms of the questions around AlphaGo and AlphaZero, with these models, and I guess maybe it's for AlphaZero because it's self-taught necessarily in AlphaGo, do the models resemble human play in any way? Do they remind you of grandmasters or famous Go players, or is it just completely alien?
Yeah, and in the chess sense, then it does remind us of several grandmasters. It has kind of, I mean, lots of amazing things actually as it learned. One thing is in terms of its opening choices, and you could see as it trained up, It developed first of all from random play through a kind of history of chess play, but its final openings were ones, it now plays things. There's this famous opening called the Berlin Defense, which is a very drawish, actually quite defensive opening, which wasn't popular at all in chess until sort of 15-20 years ago, but it's actually discovered that independently of the players, and it plays a lot of the top theory. But what the other really exciting thing about its chess opening play is that it's discovered lots of kind of sacrificial moves or ideas where it can give up material and get a good attacking play. And this is actually different from traditional chess computers. So you've had chess computers that could beat people really since the 90s. The difference with AlphaZero, because the traditional chess computers always counted their evaluation in terms of number of pawns and how much pawns advantage it is. And one big difference of AlphaZero, which is actually quite human-like, is you think of a position kind of, do you think you're going to win the game, draw the game, or lose the game? And you give yourself an evaluation in that terms rather than how many pawns up you are. And our kind of theory was that helped it to be able to not place too much emphasis on material and to be able to actually sacrifice material to get a position that kind of feels like a good position. So what it doesn't do is get into these kind of lifeless positions with no possibilities. It always gets into these positions with a lot of possibilities, which feel like you've got the chances, whereas your traditional computers are more heavily based on calculation and kind of an evaluation based on how much material you've got and that kind of thing.
See, that makes me happy. It's nice to hear that. It sounds quite artistic almost, which is
yeah. And the other thing you've got is actually it's a very rich time for chess, in that you already had strong traditional computers, and now you've got AlphaZero and actually a whole lot of neural nets now. In the last year since then, there's a whole load of neural nets that have got very, very strong. But what you've got is that playoff between the different styles. So you get these really fascinating games with AlphaZero and its new kind of attacking formations and its ways of playing against Stockfish, which is the traditional computers, where it was very, very good at defending and had its way of doing things, very strong as well. But those two styles interacting then produces these very, very exciting games full of sacrifices, and you never quite know till the end who's going to win.
Brilliant, fantastic. And is that the same in Go, Toby? Is there particular styles of player in Go, and did the AI resemble any of them, or is it just completely different?
Yes, there are different styles. There's very attacking styles. There's very territorial styles. I'm very sorry, I'm not strong enough to be able to recognise the the style in which AlphaGo played and whether that's what sort of style that is. I'm sorry, I'm just not that good enough to recognise.
I watched something Michael Redmond, who's like one of the top professionals. He's a US player but lives in Japan, and he's like nine Dan professional, so really, really strong. And he has studied some of the AlphaGo games, and he says that there's a whole lot of new moves that AlphaGo regularly does that now the professionals have started copying. So one of them is this 3-3 corner invasion, and it likes to go right in there in the corner and get that, it kind of gets some safe territory. It likes its groups, and he said it plays even safer than many of the professionals. So it likes its groups to be completely alive, and then from that kind of strong base, it can then launch an attack or an invasion elsewhere in the board. So he gets it. Oh, Toby's showing it on the board here, but you kind of get your group safe, and then you've got that base that you can then gives you a little bit more freedom to do what you want in other parts of the board. Oh, there you go. That's the 3-3 point, that white stone Toby's got there on his board. And so you like a starting move might be on the 4-4 point where the black stone is, and then you come in behind that stone, but you're quite safe in doing that. And
this has changed. This has changed since.
Good. Yeah, because it would give the opponent sort of strength on the outside to focus on the rest of the board, and so we used to learn that it was too early to invade, whereas AlphaGo and AlphaZero does it actually quite early on in the game and doesn't mind at all, and then just carries on in the rest of the board as well.
It's fantastic.
Yes, the conventional wisdom is that the territory that white gets in the corner, certainly early in the game, is less valuable than the influence and the strength that black has on the outside. But AlphaGo teaches us that conventional wisdom was wrong.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. I'm quickly going to loop up to Ben and Ian. One thing that was quite clear in the chat and actually clear in the documentary as well was it was very much pitched as humans versus machine, and it's clearly in the chat people are already talking about Terminator taking over and stuff like that. So it'd be quite nice, I think, maybe just to get your two guys' opinion on the pros and cons, if there are cons or pros around these type of AI advances and stuff like that. Is it going to lead to the end of the world and Terminators, or what's your view, Ben? I'll come to you first, and
All
then
right.
grab Ian after.
Sure. Yeah. No, of course not. There's a lot of, I think that one of the key lines in the documentary that happens very, very quickly is the line about anthropomorphization being very misleading towards our understanding of AI, and that once the human brain is very specifically very good at seeing patterns in things and applying anthropomorphic sort of motivations to things that just aren't there, and we've done that for millennia. It's why you get religions and why you get the concept of there being like fairies or elves or things running the or gods running the weather. It's we tend to see humanness in things which aren't actually human, and I think we need to sort of pull back every so often, quite a lot actually, and stop thinking, because this bit of code is very good at doing a human thing, it's a slippery slope from it, doing that thing to becoming human-like in all of the motivations and understandings and sort of ability to operate in the world, which is a completely different matter. To me, I think the thing that's exciting about these things, rather than sinister, is some of the things that have already been talked about, which is that because they are set up with different motivations in terms of winning, and because they don't have the sort of deeper cultural motivations in terms of with AlphaGo, one of the pieces of the commentary in the documentary was that humans tend to judge who is winning by who has the most points at that time, and AlphaGo judges who's most likely to win by who's most likely to win, no matter even if you only win by 1 point. And that change in motivation produces completely new ways of playing, because they're not sullied, as it were, by distractions of point scoring or machismo or pride or confusion or panic or social pressure or any of those things, where you could see on Lisa Doll's face that he was feeling the pressure of the Korean Go world on his shoulders and all that sort of thing. And when you're free from that, as AlphaGo is, it enables the system to be much more, quotes, creative. And of course the word creative is wrong there, right? But it's able to be atypical, and from those atypical moves, we humans can see new possibilities. And so when it then leads on to current professional players 3 or 4 years later saying, well, I watched those games and it showed me things I'd never thought of before, and now I'm going to do that, then I think that, to me, that all of these innovations, whether it's AlphaGo or AlphaZero or any of the other big models in whichever field of machine learning, the way that they can inspire new ways of thinking in humans, or the way that they can sort of be next to us as our sidekick, and between, you know, the two of us together can work on a problem in a new and novel and innovative way, is thoroughly exciting. I'm not worried that my code is going to try and take over the world. It doesn't even have an understanding of what that is or what that would mean. So the Terminator thing is nonsense, but actually there's a considerable amount of beauty, I think, in this.
Yeah, mate, agreed, 100%. I know, speaking of creativity, and I think last time we had you on, we were talking about hip hop in quite a lot of detail, and building a hip hop bot, which was actually one of my favorite lunch and learns of the year. So I know you've got the creativity side of things. Mate, what was your takeaway in terms of watching the documentary and some of the wider, you know, implications in terms of the data science world?
Well, you watch it for the tech, and it's the human interest story that pulls you in, right? I mean, I watched it for the neural net end, and then I didn't even realize Go was a big, massive thing over there. And then you see this sort of human interest story unfold, and it kind of gets interesting after the machines won, you know, the fourth game and then the fifth game, where they both sort of surpass the normal boundaries within each of the domains of competence, which I think is the sort of creative side of it. You know, that the lead does something that obviously the machine doesn't catch at the first scan enough to look into and see that it's the dangerous move, and that's his game changer. And then obviously the machine can calculate all the possibilities and look at the smaller margins enough that it can find ways that as the other panelists have mentioned, that it can capitalize on. So it's just I just find it a really fascinating comparison of the you know, the benefits of each, you know, the numerical computation versus whatever we've got going on upstairs. But I mean, with regards to the other question is, you know, what we call AI in machine learning is a computer that for whatever reason, playing itself or being shown examples, gets better at predicting something. AGI, the Terminator, is a machine that in some way acts in a human-like way with all the irrationalities and weirdnesses attached to that. So I just see them as kind of two different things. This is an algorithm that will beat the crap out of you at Go, but it will not make you a cup of tea. And it can't hoover your floor. And I've got a little, you know, my robot out there will hoover the floor better than. So I think it's, you know, it's a limited capacity, sort of very good within its domains, but not good at sort of extrapolating too far from it. But again, the where they extrapolate to in both of the human and the machine innovation, it's kind of got me wondering, how far did they step beyond that boundary? Was it a similar distance, or did Sedan step further, or I don't know. That's an interesting question. But yeah, great film, really enjoyed it.
Oh, it's really good, very well shot. And mate, your point about the hoovering, perhaps we could ask Natasha to speak to Demis and get that put on the product roadmap for future iterations.
No, I think they're not meant to. He did give a talk that they were meant to stop working on games now, and I think, although I don't mention hoovering, I think it was
the Hoover will be able to go around the cat
and this kind of thing.
Isolating the area, you know.
We've got to the bottom of that quite quickly. I like it. I'm going to loop back to a couple of questions from that have come in via the Q&A. The one at the top there, I don't know if you want to read along at the same time as I'm reading it out. It's from Alex Holmes. He's basically saying that Alpha Zero came along quite quickly afterwards. You know, have you got any insights, I guess, for you, Natasha? Have you got any insights on the breakthrough that made that possible? You know, it seems quite a very different strategy. Do you know anything about, you know,
I don't know the details. What I can say about it is the first time when they were trying AlphaGo and starting from human data, the reason they did it was because they didn't know if they would get anywhere. And I think they maybe even at the very first time they started off and it was slow progress and they weren't really getting anywhere without using any human knowledge. And then they tried on the amateur games. And even then, when you start off, it tends to be quite slow progress. And what Demis was saying when we interviewed him, he was kind of saying, well, it's sort of a leap of faith. Do you carry on the same path if you don't know whether you're going to get there in the end? But if they find a little bit of progress, then they know to invest in it and keep training the machine. So in that first time, they used the human data to try and get that start. And then they realized they were able to get some percentage of the human moves right. And at that stage, then they put more into it and they knew it was going to work. And so what I'm thinking is for this next stage where they didn't want to use human data at all, they did, by then, they knew it was all possible because they'd already got AlphaGo to make that progress using the human data. And so that they knew it could be done. So whether how they set it up, I don't really know the details, but that was part of what they wanted to do. And I guess once you know it can be done, then they work out a way of doing it.
They'd drawn their line in the sand as well, hadn't they? They'd had the result, and then they could go free. Go on, Ben. Sorry.
I think there are sort of two innovations that happen in parallel here. The first one would be that whether or not you could actually get a machine to play Go competently, because Go is such a complex game with so many possibilities in its, in its tree, that was the first sort of milestone. But the second milestone was something that they've been doing with other games, which was starting, the zero in AlphaZero is zero knowledge, right? So it's like the game of Breakout that you see is that it started with they have systems where they started with it not understanding the rule, not knowing what's going on at all, and competing against itself, basically. So it's in some ways it's sort of analogous to a GAN or one of those other similar types of models where you really have two models. You have like the thing that's making the thing and the other thing that's against it. And when you're running Go games, when you're running a training data, you need to have a lot of it, right? But not only do you need to have a lot of it, but you need to have a lot of it of a particular level to be able to get better. And I think the trick with AlphaZero is that you can play millions and millions and millions of games where you're playing against, an honorary ninth dan Go player, which is just the other one of you and on the other machine, as it were. And it's that ability of training AIs where there's another AI that's creating the training data which is as good as you are, which I think is really interesting. It's that acceleration of expertise based on what's creating the training data, which is fascinating. Obviously there are lots of worries that the other machine might be going down rabbit holes or not necessarily playing in a way that, it might be training you in a badly, as it were. But that breakthrough of being able to learn a model from scratch and then create more training data afterwards is something that we're seeing in not just in games, but in self-driving cars and where they're training self-driving car systems on landscapes that it's creating as it's going along. And I think that it's those sorts of models which are leading to this acceleration and capability that we've got over and above Moore's law and all the other sort of more physical things.
Do you think that use of synthetic data to train those type of self-driving cars and stuff like that has in part been influenced by the work that's been done on games ahead of it, or is it completely?
For sure. Because a game, if you think of a game, it's really just a very simplified world, right? It's a 2D environment.
Very well defined.
Very well defined, and this time is involved, but not really, compared to, and now something like a self-driving car, then that's a 3D environment, albeit you're only moving on in two of those dimensions, but time is much more important. But so if you can make something that works on a flat plane, then you can make something that works in 3D. It's much more of a, just the matrices get way bigger, right?
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. I feel like I've got to take this question from Matthew Webber. I can tell Matthew Webber is a chess fan, so I feel I'm being quite selfish asking his question as well. So Matthew was saying, you know, with chess engines in general, they're often of limited to help to lower ranked players because the machine will tell you the best move, but you know, not why. You know, does that apply in Go as well? And you know, where are the learnings, I guess, in the chess world, Natasha? So I'll come to both Natasha and Toby, if that's okay, in terms of the learnings that the amateur players can take from AI.
Well, you know what, I think having AI has really helped us now in the world of online chess, because it's really made watching chess quite attractive, because however good you are, you sometimes, if you're just watching a game, you want to know what the computer thinks. So you can switch on or off the computer, but at any point during the game, so this could be of human players or computer players, then you can get this immediate kind of evaluation of the moves. And so you'll often get these professional players, and then you get the chat, and the amateurs are saying, well, he played this wrong, and obviously you should put your knight there, and whatever. And it all comes from what the computer is recommending as the best move. But it means you can then kind of follow what's happening in the game. And if you're using it for your own games, it'll tell you straight away if you've made a mistake, because it'll show you, you know, tactical mistakes. It'll show you what to play, and it'll give you extra ideas, because you can get the best move, but typically you can get sort of alternatives as well, which are also good moves to play in a position. And I know now lots of the top professionals, if they are preparing for a particular match or learning for their own play, what they'll do is play two different computers against each other and see what new ideas the computers come up with in those positions. It doesn't solve all your problems as a human player, because the thing is, you still have to remember what the computers come up with. So it could come up with all these brilliant moves, but it just branches into so many possibilities. So you can actually use a computer not to try and learn all of the complications, but actually to do a bit like what AlphaGo did, which is to find a sort of simpler strategy rather than sort of forced complicated tactical sequences, but to find sort of ideas that are sort of understandable by humans, but don't require kind of memory beyond what you can actually do.
Fantastic, it's brilliant.
I think
come for me, Toby.
I think there's a great danger in trying to say, oh, well, the computer says this is the best move in this position, therefore I must play it. When actually, when you're playing a game, you want to play moves that you're comfortable with. I showed a bit earlier on that AlphaGo thought that invading the corner early was a good thing. And I have a suspicion that a reason it thinks it's a good thing is because it's extremely good at nullifying the outside influence the opponent gets when the corner's been invaded. But if you don't have that competence at nullifying the influence, then maybe you're better off not invading the corner early. That it's essentially you're only as good as everything. You're not just as good as the first move.
Oh, I can vouch for that, because there's this thing that AlphaZero does in chess, and it's this new. You know, it's been known, but it does it a lot more frequently than human players ever did, which is to push your H pawn, so that the outside pawn, you push it up the board, and you do an attack with it. And when we first got the games and we were looking for themes that AlphaZero played, I knew about this theme and nobody else did, and I wasn't also. We had to keep it all confidential, because so we didn't tell our friends that we're working on the book or anything like that. And so in my games, I was playing this H pawn up the board and trying to do these AlphaZero attacks. And of course, I wasn't quite as accurate as AlphaZero. So sometimes it worked well, and sometimes it just completely backfired, and I just lost the pawn, and it was all a disaster. And I got these opponents after the game saying, you shouldn't have been playing that plan, you don't want to move your H pawn in that position, that's not the thing. I'm saying, there's a reason I was doing it, I really want to tell you, but I can't. Yeah, but it's a lot of fun experimenting with trying the moves the computers do, but it doesn't guarantee you. Although on the other hand, we've also had sort of from the chess book, we had some games in there, and we've had people reporting that they played the same sort of positional ideas that Alpha Zero did. We had someone who read the book in the afternoon, played this game in their match in the evening, and they felt like they were completely inspired. They got this win against a higher ranked player and just played this beautiful game based on exactly how Alpha Zero had played. So it is a lot of fun to try and copy what the computer's doing and incorporate it into your games.
Fantastic. Sounds good. I'm a little bit conscious of time. We were meant to finish at 9 o'clock and we're already at 1:15. So I'll maybe throw one more question out there from the audience. And then I don't know if there is any key takeaways from the documentary or anything like that from each of you. A bit of a free for all, just to kind of wrap things up, if that's okay. The question again, it's actually come from Matthew Webber. So Matthew, you've done very well tonight. You've had a couple of good questions in here, but I think it's a very relevant question because he's basically saying from when computers were first invented, people immediately started trying to solve chess. And this is back in the 50s and stuff like that. They didn't realize how much computer power was needed. And he's basically saying now, in terms of these breakthroughs today, how much of that is due to computing power with Moore's law? And how much do we attribute that to the algorithms? So how much of it is algorithms? How much of it is horsepower? So I'll go to you first, Ben. I saw a hand there. Come on.
I think it's obviously a combination of the two, but in an interesting way, which is that I think over the past sort of 5 years, and certainly in the past year or so, there have been a lot of people realizing that the algorithm or the technique or the idea, the thing they wanted to build based on those algorithms that they thought of a long time ago, but which they sort of dismissed because it would have just taken far too long or been far too expensive or something like that. Those things are now eminently possible on your credit card, right? You could have had an algo or a machine learning idea that 5 years ago that you would have loved to have done, but it was just going to cost you £500,000 in sort of compute time and maybe take months to train. And you can run it on a Google TPU cluster and it will run it in an hour and it'll cost you £500. And, or even, I've got a GPU on my phone, which with TensorFlow.js, I can do some amazing stuff with. And so it's a combination of the two, I think, that you've got better algos and a better understanding of techniques and so on, but also people are freed to have those ideas because they don't have the overhead of, well, there's, we could think about it, but there's no way we could ever run it because I don't work for NASA.
Yeah, I don't have 8 mega memory or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Flashback. We're all showing our ages here. That's what it is. I say we all.
That's true.
So yeah, everyone else kind of agree with that. It's kind of that happy medium of the processing power catching up, which has allowed the thinking as well with the algorithms.
I think you've got the data thing as well. There's much more storage, so you can keep enough. I mean, the whole idea with the reinforcement learning, the teaching the games and allowing the computer to find its own latent space of possibilities came first of all from the idea that we can extract all of the patterns within the data as it exists. So I think that you needed to have that data everywhere in order to really allow the ideas that then allowed an idea for a computer to train itself from the ground up. So I think that yeah, I'd agree with that, but add in, you've got the processing power and the storage, the cheap storage as well.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Cool. As I say, I'm conscious we've overrun, so I am going to wrap things up a little bit. I feel like this is one of those evenings that could have run and run, and if we were in a live environment, we would perhaps be having a couple of glasses of wine or a beer, and everyone would be jumping all over you guys at the bar with further questions and all that sort of stuff. So you never know, in the future, perhaps we do get the chance to do that. We'll have to fly you over, Ben, to come and have a drink with us in London or something like that. So
I'm well ahead of you.
well, come on, tell us the time in New York, Ben. Tell us.
It's 4:20, but yesterday was Thanksgiving, and I realized I had some Cosmopolitans left in the fridge. So I'm like,
4:20 is a good time to drink anywhere in the world, isn't it? So,
it's a holiday weekend.
Cool. I am going to wrap things up now. So I would very much like to thank each of you coming. So thank you, Toby, Natasha, Ian, and of course Ben as well. It's been really, really enjoyable. Nice mix of games and data science, and the documentary itself was absolutely fantastic. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you guys have all enjoyed it at home as well. Thanks for joining us on the Friday night, and yeah, we'll be back soon. But thank you all very much, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.